Oh, fiddly dee, Millie B. Chapter 7, the big board. Are you on the board? Are you on the board? What's your number? What's your listing? How close are you to the top? Competition. Not my kind of, not my cup of tea. Never was. I'm the last one. I'm at the bottom of the pile, the bottom of the heap. Kind of hard to breathe down here, but it's, I think, better in the long run. Better in the long run. Anyway. Someday I'm going to sign on and just pass out here and go to sleep. Bottom of my back's okay. My head's not so good. I'm going to dig in here and try to find my neck brace. That thing really would help. It's thick, it's hard, unless it gets hot. It's really nice. You gotta look in there anyway for stuff that I think might have been stolen. I'm missing it. A thermos, 1.5 quart thermal cooker. I took it out of the box that it was shipped in, and it was in a, like a store presentation box with a handle on it. And the handle says, "Pick me up and take me with you." And I think somebody heard it say that. So we'll see. If we don't find it, I'll buy another one. Something similar. Probably get the Sun Pentown one because it's stainless steel all the way around, top, bottom, everything. And they can whine and feel sorry for themselves because they didn't steal it instead, waiting to steal it instead of the 1.5 quart. Anyway, all right, the big board. Daniel woke up the next morning feeling as if he'd been stomped on by an elephant all night long. His legs hurt, his chest hurt, his head hurt. The only thing that didn't hurt was his hair, and he wasn't sure about that. He dressed and limped down to the breakfast table slowly. Now, what happened to him? Because he was playing soccer and he didn't get beat up or kicked or anything. That's remember. He dressed and limped down to the breakfast table slowly. Denise was already eating. His mother was reading a newspaper and reading coffee, drinking coffee. Was drinking a newspaper, eating, drinking coffee. Drinking a newspaper and reading coffee. Sorry, I just woke up. You look awful, she said. I feel awful. Okay, thank you. I resemble that remark. You look awful, she said when she saw him. Didn't you sleep well? It's just from practice, Daniel said weirdly. Those guys think they're out there fighting World War III. Oh. And Coach Goober loved it. I wonder who let that gorilla out of his cage. No neck. A donk. Who needs a gun when you need a donk? What's a donk? Man, that's a donk. Don't call your coach names, Mrs. Bailey said. That's disrespectful. The other guys were calling him Goober the gorilla, not me, Daniel grunted. I was too busy getting up off the ground. I don't think half the team has ever played soccer before in their lives. I thought they would kick my kneecaps off, and that was only practice. I'd hate to see what will happen in a real game. Oh, don't be a spoil sport, his mother said, turning the page of the newspaper. You're just a little out of shape. Don't be a sissy. I know, and they put me out of shape, Daniel said. He poured cold cereal into a bowl. Then he poured on the milk. I'm glad this is not a real league season. I don't know if I'll even be able to survive a month with these guys. Your first game is Friday, his mother said. Our first game is Saturday morning, Denise said cheerfully. I think we'll win, too. I hate our team colors. It's that yucky purple. I wanted to wear my green warm-up jacket, but now it won't look right. That's too bad, Mrs. Bailey agreed, but if you're good, maybe we can get you one that will match your colors. Thanks, Mommy. I'd love it. Denise said, thanks, Mommy. She looked at Daniel. Jimmy Roundhouse's sister is on my team. Jimmy's in your club, isn't he? You like that guy, Daniel asked? You don't even know him. I think he's cute, didn't he? Said, why do you always have to act so snooty about everything? You think you're so smart. Daniel is smart, Mrs. Bailey said. She sighed and looked at both of her children. But you shouldn't act snooty, Daniel. Denise is right. I wasn't acting snooty, Daniel complained. I just said that. Never mind. Daniel began eating his cereal again. His sister stuck out her tongue out at him and got up from the table. Daniel hurried to finish. He didn't want to have another long conversation with his mother about being a good sport or snooty at that end. That had been her lecture topic the night before as they had driven home from practice. She had a lecture for everything, Daniel had decided long ago. The other boys had made fun of his leg at first, but then the coach had given them his own little talk on sportsmanship. Daniel was embarrassed. The coach had talked about teamwork and how the stronger had to help the weaker, and that they were all in it together. Then he had told them about his three-legged coon dog, too. The little lecture had made the other boys keep their comments to themselves, but being yelled at by the coach only made the guys meaner, or so it seemed to Daniel. He had felt like a moving target. More than once he had heard someone say, "Get red," right before they piled on the ball. And during several pile-ups, Daniel felt his feet being kicked out from under him. That was the worst time, being on the ground inside of the circle, kicking studded soccer shoes. Daniel was sure he was going to get his teeth kicked out one time, but he jerked his head to the side just in time. Coach Guber had each boy practice all the positions. Daniel had hoped he would just hide down by the goal net. No such luck, huh? No such luck, Chuck. Hello. Okay. At least one person is listening to me. Okay. He wanted to just hide down by the goal net, but the coach wanted each boy to practice being goalie, fullback, halfback, and forward. They also had a position called sweeper, which was a person who roamed all over the field. Barry Smedley had asked to be the sweeper, but the coach had refused to assign permanent positions. Daniel was embarrassed again when his mother suggested to the coach that Daniel be the goalie. Daniel didn't want to be the goalie because he knew you had to be quick and fast. His mother thought you just stood there all the time. But she hadn't gone to a soccer game since he was 9, so he figured she had forgotten. A lot about the fundamentals of play during the practice, but a lot of the boys didn't even seem clear about the rules. Daniel couldn't believe it. He had yelled out foul when he was deliberately kicked, but the coach didn't even seem to notice. Quit whining, one of the boys on the team had said, for Daniel shouted out another foul. But those are the rules, you idiot. Daniel replied. He regretted calling the boy an idiot because 5 minutes later the same boy tripped him accidentally on purpose when they were both going for the ball. Stand your toes, the coach yelled at Daniel, and on it went. But by the time practice was over, Daniel had decided the first fundamental of the Rockets was to inflict pain whenever possible. But you couldn't explain that to his mother. Daniel was ready to quit the team and told her so in the car, but she wouldn't hear of it. Quit after the first practice, she had said as if she were surprised. You have to give them a chance. I'm sure those boys have a few rough edges to wear off. The parents I talked to said they had never had a soccer league in town before. They've had football and baseball, but no soccer. That doesn't surprise me in the least, Daniel said. They may play rough, but they wouldn't hurt you intentionally, his mother had said. It's only for a few weeks. Besides, you just can't quit. How will it look for me if my own son doesn't participate in Goliath Industries' goodwill gesture toward the town? How will it look for me? I don't care about me. I don't care about you. I never had to put up with that kind of bullshit. Okay. Daniel had just nodded and rubbed a sore place on his ribs. He nodded wearily as his mother went into another lecture about the best ways to get along as a new boy in town. After breakfast, Daniel went to the garage, like she had a lot of experience with that, right? Yeah. He stared at the two bicycles for a moment. Today it's your turn, the boy said softly to the old red bicycle. He knocked the kickstand up and pushed the Spirit Flyer outside. Daniel rode downtown slowly. He purposely rode past the sheriff's office, hoping to see some sign of Susan or John Kramer. He thought it might help if they saw him on the Spirit Flyer, but they didn't appear to be there. He sighed. He figured they probably would never want to speak to him again anyway. Daniel wasn't sure where he wanted to ride next. He didn't realize how sore he felt until he'd ridden a few blocks. When he turned the corner on Main Street, he saw something that caught his interest. A big tractor-trailer truck was parked in front of the toy store. Just then, two men appeared from behind the trailer, the long trailer. They were carrying a long, black, shiny rectangle. Daniel had never seen anything like it. It appeared to be made out of some kind of black plastic or glass. The man had trouble turning the corner to the door of the toy store because the black rectangle was almost 20 feet long and at least 7 feet high. Luckily for the man, the old door of the toy store was extra large. Didn't seem to notice him. A cold feeling went through Daniel's stomach as the men carried the black object over to a bare wall. The rectangle was about 3 inches thick. A thin black casing ran around the edges, like a frame. The more Daniel looked at the thing, the more uneasy he felt. Suddenly, Daniel had a crazy thought. He decided to hide in the store as long as possible just to see what was going on. The men lifted the panel up against the wall. Mrs. Happy directed them to lift one end and lower the other. Then she smiled. "That's it," she said. The men let go. The black panel hung on the wall like a giant picture or mirror. Daniel rubbed his eyes. He hadn't seen any hooks or any wires holding the black panel in place. "Must be a real thin wire or something," Daniel said to himself. The men marched out of the toy store without looking back. Mrs. Happy walked back to her office and returned with the carpet bag. Daniel was even more surprised to see Barry Smedlow come out of the woman's office. Barry had a bunch of wrapped candies in his hand. He seemed to be sucking on about 4 of them at once. "What's that?" Barry mumbled around the candy. He seemed fascinated and puzzled by the long black object. "Why, that's the big board I was telling you about," Mrs. Happy said. "Haven't you ever seen one?" "Yeah, like, haven't you ever seen a demon? Haven't you ever seen a portal, man? Through the deeper world, the spiritual world, the demonic world?" "No," Barry said. "What does it do?" "Keep score, silly. What did you think it did?" The old woman grunted and shook her head. "You would think in this day and age, children would know about important things." "Oh, yeah." The old woman reached in her carpet bag and pulled out a black 5-inch cube that seemed to be made of the same black shiny material as the big board. Daniel stared as she reached down and pulled a 3-pronged plug wire right out of the top of the cube. He rubbed his eyes and looked again. He was sure the surface where the plug had been was smooth without any opening. In the same mysterious fashion, the woman took the plug and pushed it into the bottom edge. But she pulled the 3-pronged plug and wire out of the top of the cube. In the same mysterious fashion, the woman took the plug and pushed it into the bottom of the big board. A sizzling electric noise broke the air as the dark panel sparkled with light. Lights flashed on and off, leaving puffs of blue smoke for the light. The sounds of searing static and electricity crackled throughout the store. Then it was quiet. The blue smoke lifted across the top of the big board were written in tiny lights. The point system, official scores. "There we go," Mrs. Happy said, her face beaming with smiles. "Everything appears to be in working order. Of course, it will take some time for the point system to really get humming along. But once all the children check in with their number cards, well, you'll see." "It's a scorecard. What scores does it keep?" Barry asked. "Goodness me," Mrs. Happy said. "I've never seen such a backwater town as this. Backward little town is this." Barry stared at the big board and gulped. Except for the words across the top, the rest of the surface was blank darkness. "Well, how does it work?" Barry finally asked. He was afraid Mrs. Happy would call him stupid once again, but she smiled this time. "Give me your number card, please," she said. "Since you're number 1, you'll be the first child in town to have a rank officially scored on the big board." The president of the Cobra Club fished a shiny black card out of his pocket. The old woman grabbed it, turned it over, then quickly stuck it into a slot in the big board. Daniel blinked. The slot had just seemed to appear out of nowhere. "Now repeat after me," Mrs. Happy said. Big board on the wall. How do I rank in the scores of all?" Barry repeats. Big board on the wall. How do I rank in the scores of all?" In a flash, the big board came to life. Rows and columns of numbers appeared out of the dark surface. Then, as quickly as it began, it stopped with a ding, like the sound of a cash register opening. Ka-ching! The new words had appeared in bright purple letters. Barry Schmedler, level 1, rank 1, score 826 points. See, you're still number 1, Mrs. Happy said. The old woman suddenly stopped. She looked carefully around the room. I want to show you something else in my office. Barry followed the old woman back into the room. As soon as they left, Daniel stuck his head back up and stared at the mysterious board. In a flash of purple lights, the big board sprang into action. Daniel was horrified when the light stopped. 4-foot-high letters spelled out the message. Daniel Bailey, we've got your number. You're next. While Daniel puzzled about what the message meant, he looked back and forth between the big board and the old woman's office, suddenly wishing he hadn't been hiding. Something about the mysterious board had a pull on the boy. In fact, that's when Daniel saw an image appear out of the shadowy darkness below the message. Daniel stepped from behind the shelf to get a better look. The image became clearer as Daniel himself walked closer to the dark panel. The moving image inside the board appeared to be a boy who was walking toward the front of the panel. Out of curiosity, Daniel walked closer to the big board. He was only 4 feet away when he saw that the boy inside the dark panel was walking with a limp. Duh. We couldn't have guessed that. It's his ghost slave. Then Daniel saw that the boy was holding a chain. Daniel gasped when the boy limped right up to the front of the panel. That's when Daniel realized he was looking at a reflection of himself. Wavy hair, freckles and all. The boy on the other side smiled, then yanked on the chain. Daniel stumbled forward and yelped at the same time as he almost fell to the ground. Then Daniel saw a chain going from himself right up into the big board. It's about time you learned who was boss in this town, the reflection of Daniel whispered. His reflected image began to laugh. To get along, you have to go along. Got it? The point system is the only game in town. You've got to play by the rules if you want to be popular again, Gimpy the Limpy. The reflection laughed again and pulled hard on the chain. Daniel felt a constriction in his throat as the chain pulled tighter. Then he heard noises coming from Mrs. Happy's office. The big purple letters began glowing on and off rapidly. Daniel scrambled to his feet. He heard the rattling of a chain as he ran for the door. His legs seemed to ache horribly as he limped through the aisles of the door. The sound of the chain laughed him all the way outside. Of course, Mrs. Happy knew, we'll find out in the next chapter, knew what was going on all the time. She probably was pulling him with her little crochet hooks in her cube. All right, good night. Sleep tight. My lone listener there. Yeah, how you doing, bud? Hello. Hello. Good night.